My friends, here we go yet again. Once more, the following are essential terms in order to understand the historical Paul and his project. We are not talking about the Paul who gets theologized and romanticized today by so many Christians, but rather the historical Paul as he was, as best as we can know it. Without understanding these terms properly, Paul is simply inaccessible to you. Misunderstanding and distortion inescapably result. In order to read Paul respectfully, let's go over these terms. Innovators and first adopters. Innovators and first adopters are those Israelite clients who heard Paul's innovation, the gospel of God, accepted it, and promoted the change. Both innovators and first adopters control adequate material and personality resources, enough to absorb the possible failure due to an unsuccessful innovation. Both innovators and first adopters can understand and apply rather complicated knowledge. They espouse the value of venturesomeness, that is, a desire for the daring, the chancy, and the risky. Finally, innovators are cosmopolites, meaning they have contact with outsiders and most often have social relationships with them. Paul frequently refers to innovators and first adopters in his 7 authentic letters as being his fellow workers. For example, Prisca and Aquila, or Urbanus and Stachys, and he refers to Timothy and Titus. Paul also refers to Mark, Aristarchus, Demas, and Luke, and others, as well as unnamed folks. What is it that differentiates the first adopters from the innovators? Well, first adopters are a more integrated part of the local social system than are the innovators. First adopters, therefore, are locally focused people and frequently are opinion leaders. Now, first adopters are venturesome, but they are not that far ahead of the average person. Hence, first adopters tend to be more anchored in the status quo than are the innovators. First adopters serve as role models for others in adopting the innovation. They are respected by their peers, and they are the embodiment of successful and discreet use of the new idea. While venturesome to a degree, first adopters are less risky than the innovators, and they are aware that they must continue to earn the esteem and reputation of their colleagues if their position as opinion leaders in the community is to be maintained.
When Paul went into a town with an Israelite minority, he would speak to his fellow Israelites as was the usual custom with the visiting fellow in-group members. He would tell them what the God of Israel, the God of our ancestors, had recently done in Israel, for Israelites, by raising a holy man and prophet from the dead. A holy man and prophet named Jesus from Nazareth. Given that God raised him, this Jesus will be Israel's forthcoming Messiah. And his messianic activity would mark the establishment of a theocracy in Israel. Given what God did to him, this Jesus must also be some sort of cosmic Lord. In the synagogue, some members found what Paul said convincing and relevant. Acts 17:4. These would be the innovators, quote-unquote innovators, or quote-unquote first adopters. And they invited Paul to tell them more. They constituted a smattering, or at least a splintering of relatively small synagogue groups or gatherings in a given city.
Refraction. Refraction is context-based change of the innovation, or gospel of God. Refraction refers to the degree to which an innovation, or the context of the innovation, is changed whenever it is introduced into a new setting or situation. The innovation or gospel of God proclaimed by Paul was refracted by his Corinthian Israelite clients, the Jesus group Messianists there.
All of Paul's 7 authentic letters, aside from Romans, are premised on a relationship that involved an information exchange with persons who have accepted the innovation proclaimed by Paul, at least to some extent. It is also with a view to information exchange that Paul sends emissaries, such as Timothy, Apollos, Epaphroditus, Silvanus, and Prisca to the new Jesus groups. Similarly, these same Jesus groups founded by Paul sent emissaries to him with questions about the innovation for which they needed answers, or to report on problems. In Corinth, Chloe's group informed Paul about the problems there while he was in Ephesus. Concerning the resurrection of the dead, Paul believes that they have either not understood his proclamation or misunderstood it quite thoroughly. And sometimes when an innovation is diffused, it is refracted or reinvented. Refraction describes the degree to which an innovation or its context is changed when introduced into a new setting or situation. The Corinthians refracted the innovation Paul preached. The key feature of Paul's gospel is that those who believed that the God of Israel raised Jesus from the dead would also likely be raised by the God of Israel. The Corinthian Jesus group reinvented or modified this idea. They denied a forthcoming resurrection of the dead because, they said, the dead are not raised. Paul rebuts this by saying, if this were true, then it would also be true of Jesus. And then those change agents who proclaim Jesus' resurrection would be false witnesses who dishonor God. As all died after the first creature, so all will be raised after Jesus.
Reinvention. Reinvention is the behavior resulting from the refraction of the innovation. For example, clique formation in the Corinthian Jesus group, or when the Corinthian Messianists denied the resurrection proclaimed by Paul. A key feature of Paul's gospel or innovation was that those Israelites who believed in what the God of Israel did in the death and resurrection of Jesus, according to Paul, will likewise be raised by the Israelite patron God, according to Paul. The Corinthian Jesus group members reinvented or modified the significance of this forthcoming event, and thus departed from Paul's mainline version of the innovation, promoted by the change agency, the God of Israel, who had revealed it to Paul in an altered state of consciousness. As evidenced by the history of Jesus movement groups, later Christianity, and multiple Christian traditions, an innovation is not invariant during the process of its diffusion. Put another way, our New Testament library shows ample evidence of the gospel and gospels evolving, changing, and being recontextualized over time via refraction and reinvention. Evangelization. Evangelization is the process of communicating the innovation or gospel worked by God in the Israelite tradition. Namely, that the God of Israel raised Jesus from the dead and constituted him Messiah and cosmic Lord, soon to return to inaugurate theocracy in Palestine. This is Paul's innovation, or gospel of God.
Well, how was the innovation received? Probably from all of your reading experience, whether scholarship or just reading the text of the Bible, you know that the majority did not receive it well. Luke reports large numbers of people joining the ranks of the believers. In Acts 2:41, he talks about 3,000. In Acts 4:4, he talks about 5,000. His numbers are probably exaggerated, and his emphasis is simply on the inexorable growth of the community. But many people did not accept Paul and his message. We see that in Acts continually. And in the 2nd and 3rd centuries after Paul's death, he was systematically and scathingly criticized.